everyone, Kieran here from Keys Minis. Today we are painting a white scar. So I sprayed this with Corax White first, but because the can was so old and a bit out of date, it kind of crackled a bit. So to try and rescue this and not have to completely strip the model, I just went over with a base coat of Corax White. You could obviously go over from a black and then base this up, but you're going to take several layers. I just did thin coats, glaze coats, just to cover it and just to try and cover as many of the cracks up. It wasn't majorly cracked, it was just like around the knees and on some of the pauldrons. I managed to kind of rescue the model, but it's not a piece like obviously I'd enter into any kind of competition or anything, because it's just a little bit thicker than what I would usually apply paint. I don't know what was wrong with the spray. It's an old Corax White. I've not used it a lot, maybe not shook it up as much, maybe it was too cold that day. It was just one of those things. So yeah, just a base coat of Corax White here. I do apologise, I filmed this video several weeks ago, but since then I've just been a little ill, so nothing serious, just sore throats, colds, coughs, and just trying to get over those. And then I'm focusing on Golden Demon right now, so I do apologise. That's taken up a lot of my time. I've got a couple of entries I'm working on that I just really want to do well with, so I'm trying to put a lot of effort into them. And obviously March from Crag's been on as well, and I showed the finished Manus Calgar that I'd done, so I've been working on him and his Victress Guard. So right, this recipe, I'm just going to say it straight away. I got this recipe from Heavy Archive, which is a Dave Perriman recipe guide that him and his community have put together. I'll link this in the description, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the recipes up in certain ones, so certain legions. Now using Abaddon Black, all I'm doing is just blocking in the black areas, like I don't know what they call it, but the under armour, the kind of fleshy skin membrane that they have on the arm pauldrons, etc., around the back of the knees. So yeah, just blocking those out, any areas I want to. Yeah, so this recipe is from the Heavy Archive. I'll link it. I do recommend checking it out. I'm going to try and cover some of them, but then do my own spin on them. I changed this recipe up a little bit just for what I wanted. It wasn't much, I just added an extra grey in just to create a different effect. So yeah, just working on those black areas, just covering obviously around the back, the legs. I forgot, what is this, a Reaver model? I forgot what style it is, but I know they're not very good in game, but I know they look great though. So using Ulthan Grey next, all I'm going to do is create a thick deep shadow, not deep shadow, but a shadow line, kind of around the armour, at the bottom of the knees, so any kind of like where I'm going to use a point highlight. It's kind of like doing a thick edge highlight really. I'm just creating a deep shadow or a shadow, soft shadow, using Ulthan Grey in certain areas around, like the knee pauldrons, just under the chest, just to create a bit more of a shadow effect. And then I'm going to go back in with another colour after to kind of blend it a little bit more. I kind of wanted it to look to enhance the effect with it being a little bit more off-white. Obviously if the spray had worked, I wouldn't have had to base coat this Corax White, so I'd have skipped half the steps out and just moved on to these kind of areas if I'd have had a smooth finish. But yeah, all I'm trying to do is obviously go back and then just create some shadows and some effects to create that off-white look, to then really make the edge highlights pop later on. The final edge highlight is going to be right towards the end, because I'm going to work on some other areas of the model. I actually painted pretty much the whole recipe of this, so I have painted the leather as well, so I might cover a separate tutorial, just a short one on that as well, just to, because I've got those areas sat. I've also filmed a salamander at the same time. So with these, obviously I'm using thin glazing layers, just to no more than one layer. I only did one layer because I didn't think I needed much, but obviously if you want to create a more of a shift and a blend, then you could create a second layer, working in a smaller area if you want to create a darker look. Now using Administratum Grey very quickly, just to kind of blend that into that Corax White a little bit, working up. So it's obviously it's a bit bluer, the Ulthan Grey. So I kind of wanted to just bring it back to some of the more of a whiter colour, off white. So just working with a thin glaze, just pushing up to get most of the obviously where the pigment lands higher up the model. And that was it. Just a nice, simple. Just wasn't accurate with this. Wasn't rushing, but just taking my time, just to create that blend a little bit more. Yeah, very simple. You could just skip this and probably do Administratum Grey if you want, Ulthan Grey. If you want to skip a step and use that as your shadow, you get the same, very similar effect really. So now I'm using Skavenblight Dinge. I'm going to use that to create my, obviously, what do you call it? A pin highlight? Not your pin highlight. I forgot what you call it. So a recess shade, a deep recess shade. I'm gonna obviously work on those, like, I don't know, those vents, really right under the edges of the model. A thin line of Skavenblight Dinge, obviously around the knee pauldrons, any kind of lines and gaps, those little square panels that they have on the legs. Here is obviously one of those armour joins, so just take my time. Yeah, this gives you the deep shadow effect. You could go with a darker shadow, but I think the grey just complements it a lot better. So that's what I really like about the Heavy Archive, is it gives you the ideas for the colours that kind of complement the model a little bit better. Kind of, if I'd have tried to do a white scar on my own, I probably would have gone black, or Rhino Oxide or something dark like that, and using Skavenblight Dinge I probably wouldn't have thought about, whereas, maybe Ash and Grey I could have probably thought about using very similar kind of colours, but it just adds to the depth of the model, and it's a really good resource that what Dave Perriman and his friends and his community have created for free. Like I said, I'll link it, and it's allowed me to create a tutorial and try painting a new model, really, because I've never painted a white scar. This is the first one I've ever done, and I did do things very different. I did some freehand on this model. Again, I can, if people want to see a tutorial on how I did the freehand, I'm more than happy to do that. I did film that part, but the video would have been like an hour long just for this paint tutorial, and it's long enough with around the 20-minute mark. So I decided to save that. If people want me to skip it and do it, I can. I'm not great at freehand. It's a technique I'm working on, but yeah, this Skavenblight Dinge adds a real nice effect. Well, like with these recipes, I've also done a salamander as well. So next stage I'm using Khorne Red, and I'll just cover that bit in a minute. So next stage I'm using Khorne Red, and I'm just kind of highlighting the skull on the chest. If it was the Aquila, I would have done the Aquila, but it's on these Reaver kind of models, I think it's a skull. Well, it is a skull, you can see there, skull and crossbones. And then obviously it only has one pauldron, soldier pauldron. I'm pointing at the camera here, you can't see that obviously. One shoulder pauldron, so I'm just going to work out around the edge of that shoulder pauldron there with the Khorne Red, and just take your time. I was really steady with this, because obviously if I went in heavy-handed, I'm going to ruin a good part of the white, and I did at one point. I had to spend a bit of time correcting, so just take your time, use a good point of a brush, thin layers. I probably did around, I had to do about 2 coats, but I just took my time to get the coverage that you need, because obviously I just really do not want to mess this stage up. That's the scary thing about working with white, is obviously I didn't want to mess this stage back up. So yeah, I've filmed this one, and I filmed a salamander. I'm going to use some of the rest of it. I'm not going to use them all, because I'd like people to check it out. I think it's an absolute fantastic resource that they've created for people. But my whole idea is I want to film each chapter anyway, but I want to obviously put my own little spin on it, and I don't paint exactly in the heavy metal style. I kind of try and do my own little variations. I'm not as skilled as that. So now using Khorne Red and Abaddon Black, I'm just going to create a shadow effect just on the pauldron, on the edges of the pauldron, kind of where a bit of shadow might fall on it, mainly around these corners. Very thin, one layer. You could go all across, and then in the middle of this if you really want to create a darker look, but that was it. I didn't want to. So now using Wazdakka Red, I'm just going to highlight up. You could, if you want to make the blends a little better, you could use a mixture of Khorne Red and Wazdakka Red first. I did that on the freehand that you can see, but yeah, all I'm doing is edge highlighting, just not a thin light highlight, that's the next stage. We're using Sun Scarletz, but trying to work as just the first highlight to create a bit of a transition off. It's very difficult using on these thin shoulder pauldrons for people to get, so I really recommend a good brush with a good point. Take your time, adjust the model. As you can see, I'm moving the model to where I find it easier, which is a nightmare for when I'm filming. As you can see, I'm really close to the edge of the camera here. It's just all about taking that little bit of extra time and not trying to rush. The scary bit, obviously, doing this for me over a white again, is trying to do these fine edge highlights on the inside of the pauldron. So a good point, took my time and just worked. Obviously, clean your brush off regular when you're edge highlighting. You don't want the paint to dry up too much, so I try to cut as many of those bits out when I'm cleaning the brush and then going back in, because it would just drag the video out a little longer. But it's a tip I recommend, is to, once you feel the paint starting to dry and it's not really touching the model as well, and you're having to apply a little bit more pressure, that's probably a good time then to clear the brush off, go again, and apply another layer. Work regular, and just really take your time on these edge highlights. So time consuming. Edge highlighting I really enjoy, and I find it quite relaxing now, but for a lot of people, obviously, you don't want to do that. That's fine. I haven't got a recommendation with the white scar though, because you can't really dry brush it on those areas. So yeah, it's a skill you're probably gonna have to learn. And this is what I'm on about focusing too much. Just kind of work off camera. But using Sun Scarletz, I'm going to work with probably a thinner brush, a smaller brush now, and you can just see it on there, and just take my time and work that edge highlight. Sometimes when you're edge highlighting, you have to go over the area once or twice, just as long as you wipe the excess of your brush, because I sometimes always forget, and that leaves a thicker line than you want. Make sure you wipe the excess off, and obviously just use a good pointed brush. If you're going to have to go on the inside edges here, it's going to, like I said, take a little bit more time, but obviously then when you're using it on the actual edges, you can get a really nice look. What I like about these models, these Reaver kind of models, is it actually forces you to use the point a little bit more, which is another method because there's more curves. There is flat lines and panels like on the legs, but because of the stances, there's a bit more curves to the armor, so it kind of forces you to learn to do edge highlighting with the point of your brush as well, and it's developed my hand control doing it on this and other models. So yeah, take your time and have a little bit of fun with it. next using Vallejo White, and now I'm just going to highlight the armour. So I didn't really put in too much of this in terms of worrying about being a super thin line or really thick line. Just a nice simple use of the edge highlight, wipe the excess off, just like I've just mentioned, and I'm just going to work all the way around the armour on the white. So I'm not going to focus too much about like where the light had hit. You can do, obviously, and take your time with that, but I'm going to really try to make this pop a little bit and work around all the armour panels. So this obviously is going to be quite a time consuming situation for a lot of people, but if you obviously want to skip ahead and not do too much, just find the points where you think the light had hit more and then create your edge highlight from there, and maybe work a thinner line out to create a kind of thin gradient effect. You could kind of gradient it out, but that's probably going to take a little bit of time, but just not as much. You just find obviously the corners and any areas you want to stand out. So yeah, as you can see, I'm just taking my time, cleaning my brush regular and going in. I always kind of edge highlight around this kind of I don't know, the seal of the head of the armour, because I just think it adds to the effect as well. I know it can be easily missed, but I just think it completes the model a little bit, and it's actually quite a good area to practice edge highlighting on, because it's got a good raised area that you can practice to get your point on, which it offers least resistance as well. So obviously here, just around the last panels, the vent panels, I don't know. So as you can see, just taking my time, really working the area. If I have to go over the area, pull my brush off and then go back down the same area, I'm not as accurate. I can't swoop it, because I get quite shaky hands. I can't swoop a nice straight line down. I have to work it sometimes, kind of a sketch, which forces you to be a little bit more accurate at times, but it means I don't get the smoothness sometimes. With experience, I know I'll get better at it, but and I've already got 10 times better at it from just practicing the technique. But yeah, my hands are terrible for shakiness, so as you can see a little bit here, so you just have to really be patient. I kind of find it, like I said, I kind of like edge highlighting now. I find it a little bit cathartic and relaxing. It's just something, put some music on, sit back, relax, and just take your time. And I like getting lost in the model. So now I'm using the white again, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some lines and scratches into the armour. This just creates a final effect. So obviously where I've done some freehand here, gone across those little dots, little scratches, lines, so it looks like the armour's took a little bit of a beating across the time. And then once I've done this, I'm just going to go back with Skavenblight Dinge as well, and I'll just create dots and lines and recreate that area as well. I've got to say, having painted this model, I'm not going to paint too many white scars. I'm a Dark Angels kind of guy. I love those, but I would definitely paint more white scars now, and I don't fear white armour as much for trying to do this, and I'm really glad I attempted it. So now with Skavenblight Dinge, just added some dots, lines and scratches in to finally finish the model. Just again, nice relax, don't rush, yeah, just work a smaller area, little dots, points, scratch lines, and have a little bit of fun with it. Work in the smaller area, because you kind of want it to look like it's damaged and it's pulled back to the ceramite, right to the underlayer, and not the sprayed area or the white area effect of the armour. So the original metal. With others, like a green, I'd use like a black probably. The Ultramarines, I think I used a black, or you could use Rhinoxide as well. If you're using if you're using Blood Angels, I imagine. And here's the finished model. Like I said, it's not perfect, it's not so smooth as what I would do, but yeah, I really enjoyed painting this. It's a great resource, that Heavy Metal Art Archive. I've linked it in the description. I really hope it helps some painters. It's helped me challenge myself, and I just wanted to bring this process to you. So thanks for watching. Please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.